Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent uh-oh experiences in business.
Learn what their uh-oh cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
Hey, welcome, cohesive leaders. We are happy to have you, and even happier to have Jill Avey with us today. Jill, welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's so great to see that smiling face if you're watching us on YouTube, but if you're listening on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, you're going to tell that smile is coming through every word that she says. So, Jill, we like to start out with a nice little way to get you introduced to our listeners and our viewers. And that is, tell us something about you that is not on your social media profile.
So something that people usually could not ever guess about me is that I like to listen to techno, and particularly groovy disco house music in the morning. So I get up at 4:30 every morning to be on LinkedIn and be part of the community there. And so that's what gets me going in the morning. So I've usually got that in my ears while I'm commenting on people's posts.
Okay, I'm techno. I mean,
Like actual EDM type stuff?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have friends that listen to that because they love the beats, the no music, and it just helps them zone in.
I found it during the pandemic, and YouTube just started feeding me, some really good DJs. And I had no idea that this melodic house was how I got started. And it's really great to work to.
You don't get lost in the lyrics. It's just the beat. It's just the rhythm. And so I love it.
Is it
and
like
it's
dance
just
music?
fun.
Would it be more dance?
Yeah, like it takes you back to when you used to go out dancing and having fun, and
right,
so it's really
no
good.
lyrics, just the music,
just the beat bump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to be Googling that later today.
Yeah. That's awesome. What about your morning routine?
I'm getting up. It's good. Getting up is good. Getting up is good. Yes.
All right. I get up, try to read Bible, all those things in the morning. So not always great at it, but a workout. So that's my morning thing. So awesome. All right, Jill, next question is, we want to get to know who you are as far as identity goes. What are some character traits that either you would define yourself as, that you aspire to, or friends would say, if you're in the room or out of the room, how would they define you as far as behaviors and character traits? We don't want to talk about roles or hats you wear, things like that. We'll get into that. This is what is your identity, your character side of things, how people would define you, or yourself, how you would define yourself.
Well, I'm a person that likes to have a lot of fun, even when it's serious. And that's actually one of my values, is making things light, even when they're serious, because I think that we can all do our best thinking, and it just makes life so much more livable and so much more enjoyable to get through things. So even in business, where I'm very serious, people used to think that I wasn't serious enough because I like to smile and laugh, but I think it's really an important part of everything that we do. And so often as adults, we forget that play is important still, and we need to play, we need to laugh. It's really important parts of life. And so I like to be the instigator of that.
Well, I'll tell you, that came across, right away, because I said that in the beginning about your smile, that people would get the happiness and the joy that came from that. Little did I know that I was actually describing her even when she was in the room.
Yep, absolutely. And then I love that. That's the great quote of, we do not get old because we stop, because we don't stop playing because we're old. We get old because we stop playing. So love that. Yeah. I've written a lot about that. So what else? What other character? Fun loving is great. What other characteristics?
I'm relentlessly positive too. That's probably part of that, but people, often think that positive, happy people are just that way, but it's a practice, and it's something that you have to work at every day. And so I was just talking about somebody who was really positive the other day, and it's easy to think that comes easy for people. And I want to underscore, how much work that is, because we often don't see the downside for those people. They're not showing, myself included, like I'm one that's like when I feel down, I'm going to go do something alone and, work to pick myself back up. And so usually when you see me, I'm going to have a smile on my face. I'm going to have some energy about me. And unless, a couple of years ago, I went through a back problem and I didn't have a lot of, it wasn't a lot of positive energy then. But for the most part, I'm really working hard to see what is the gift out of situations. What do I have to learn? We're going to talk about some, my own situation in a minute, but I'm always immediately stopping to think, okay, what is the good in this situation? How is this happening for me, not to me? And so that's something that I really try to spread around, because I was so shocked one time when I heard, I started meditating and I heard this saying that you owe it to others to be happy, because when you're not, you bring everyone else around you down. And I just thought, wow, I always want to serve others and be a positive influence on this planet. And so I really kind of took that to heart, and that's how I live my everyday.
That's really great. I really appreciate that. It's allowing you to make choices about who you're going to be, as opposed to the circumstances controlling who you're going to be. So
Exactly.
it's really great. And we could spend a whole session just on positive attitude and positive mindset, and how important that is, not only to yourself, but to others around you. And you've touched on that, which is really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. What are some of the roles that you play? What are the hats that you wear? I know that you are an advocate for women in leadership. I know you do some of those things. So feel free to talk about those hats.
Yeah, so I'm a coach. I'm a business owner. I'm a marketer by heart. I was in marketing for 25 years before I became a coach. And most recently, I'm a kind of a community leader. I started this group of women in my neighborhood, and we just got together last night to celebrate solstice. And this group is about creating deeper relationships. So it's not just chit chat like at the neighborhood block party, but we're talking about things that are dear to us, and just kind of getting to know each other on a deeper level. And people are really loving it. We've been this was our 6th gathering, so I'm excited about this, and it's kind of a neat hyper local movement that I have going on.
Awesome. People more now than ever need community. I mean, it's the fabric of society, and while social media was meant to connect us, it has separated us and isolated us more than anything else. So the need for that physical connection, even if it's digital, but the fact that when you send something, that there's reply, and it's a great movement. And I think I hear a lot of folks wanting more of those communities to be able to have subject matter they can talk about.
Yeah. So we know that you have prepared for our session today. So let's get to the meat of your uh-oh experience. So share with us the uh-oh that was very personal to you, and just talk about it. We'll just be having a conversation.
You bet. I'm so glad to be able to talk about this, because I think it's really important that we share all of our mishaps along with our successes, because when we're Ben, you talked about social media. When we're only seeing the polished, end result of somebody's journey, we often compare, we say, don't compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. And so this is a chance for people to see the insides and see the muddy journey that developed this person into who they are. And I think it's a excellent conversation. I love what you're doing here. So there have been many, so I picked one to talk about today. But this is one of the biggest ones, and it's one that is still a practice for me today. It's one that I really share a lot with my clients, because I hit my uh-oh moment when I realized that my calendar was completely packed. I was working a full-time job with about 25% travel, which meant I was flying all the time. I was also doing my side hustle, like a lot of people want to do, and that was a meditation cushion business where I assembled the products, and I picked, packed, and shipped all the orders myself. So it was a lot of work. And then on top of that, if that wasn't enough, I was serving on 2 nonprofit boards. And so one of those jobs was about 10 hours a week. And the other one, I was the president of the board. So it was just so many responsibilities. I was really passionate about everything that I was doing, but I was stretched so thin. And so I've been kind of throwing myself at work, trying to be more successful. And this was that moment where I realized more isn't getting me there. In fact, it was just getting me stretched too thin, such that I wasn't doing a good job I wasn't doing the job that I wanted to do. I wasn't showing up how I really wanted to be showing up at anything, because I was doing so much and just rushing through everything, and not being able to be present in the moment and mindful about, the things that I was doing. So it really, um, it takes such a toll on your life to be over busy. And when we keep putting more and more and more on our plates, humans are really great at doing more and adding, but we're not very good at subtracting. And so that was my huge lesson, was like, I have to learn how to subtract if I'm going to add, because, we talked about identities. I have ADHD, and I am endlessly enthusiastic about new things. And I, have so much interest and so much curiosity that there is no shortage of things that I want to add to my plate. And so this has become, was a huge realization for me to finally stop and say, whoa, enough.
Yeah. You know what? Because oftentimes we think that a full calendar is what makes us successful, right? We
Yes.
think that all this doing to do that. So I'm curious to know, like, what was the moment that you said, oh my gosh, this calendar is now managing me and I don't have control? Like, were you driving down the road listening to your techno and all of a sudden you got this, like, oh my gosh, were you having a conversation with someone? Were you coaching someone? I mean, what was happening that you actually went, holy crap, I am doing something that I know better to not do? What was that like?
It was actually in a coaching session. It was where I realized, oh, this isn't helping me. And thanks to a really talented coach a long time ago, I had that light bulb moment that I always try to give to my clients too, is where I realized I got to look at myself as I was talking, and I realized, oh, I'm stretching myself too thin, and this can't continue.
Right. And this is what a great example of emotional intelligence, being able to be self-aware of what's happening at the time and not just letting you do more things. Oftentimes we think to solve the problem is to do more of the things that we're already doing to solve the problem. When in
Right.
fact, sometimes it's giving it up, taking a step back, really just relaxing a little bit from the moment. Oh, great.
Human beings, not human doings.
Yes, human beings.
Right.
Awesome. So what did this by you having that realization, what did it cost you? Like, what was the cost? Because if you remove stuff from your plate, was there a financial toll? What was the personal toll of, was it wrapped up in your identity being busy and all that? So what was the process of the cost that it actually you experienced from that?
I mean, for me, the cost was not only not being as good as I wanted to be in these situations and not being able to, really shine like I wanted to, but the cost was also personal, because my relationships suffered. My poor husband, like, I can't believe we've been together 30 years now, and I can't believe he's actually stayed with me through all of these, all these moments, but particularly this one, because, he was the one that suffered. He didn't get a lot of attention at that time, because I still, we had elderly dogs. I still worked out. I still meditated. And, he's pretty good about making sure he gets enough time, but it clearly wasn't the quality that it is today. And so our relationship suffered a lot from that. And I think that happens. I think our families take the toll when we get overloaded on career, and we got to watch out for that, because our families are most important, and careers come and go, jobs come and go, but your family's hopefully going to be with you for your whole life.
So how difficult was it for you, though? I mean, it's easy for us to say in a conversation, you've already been through it, so it's like that. But for others who are facing, something like this, how hard was it for you to say, okay, I really am going to put on the brakes?
Well, that part's a lot easier than actually putting on the brakes, right? Because actually saying no to the things is the hard part, and unraveling what you were committed to, like these two nonprofits. I still don't volunteer. I was such a huge volunteer advocate for my whole life. And I stopped volunteering at that time. And to unravel myself from those two roles, like, being the president of the board, I couldn't just stop doing that right away. It took a while to be able to, fulfill my duty and get out of that one.
Right.
And what I did is I shifted that. It was when I was first starting to coach at that point that I was getting out of that. And so I started coaching the executive director instead of volunteering to do work for them. So I found a way, and that's to me really the key, is I found a way to be able to, just completely unravel and say no and stop doing some things, but then other things shift it so that it worked to my benefit rather than just me giving, and so that there was more of a mutual benefit there. And so, I shut down that business. That was a hard decision. Like, if I had invested so much into this little side hustle and I really wanted to make it fly, and I'm a huge advocate of meditation. And so I was so excited about sharing that with people, and, admitting that you have a failure there too, and that this just isn't going to be what you hoped it was. That's hard to do. But when you can make that decision of I'm gonna shut this down, I'm gonna stop doing this, it's such a relief, and you get to focus so much more on things. And so making those tough calls, having those hard conversations with people that you can't keep doing this thing you love doing for them when they're counting on you, you do get that back, as hard as it is.
This is going to be a two-part. One's a statement, and then one will be a question. But I find this very interesting. This is maybe one of the first uh-ohs where a lot of the cost was actually paid prior to the realization of the actual experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were paying the price prior, and then there was a change. But then there was a cost afterwards. How did the folks in your life that used to ask for things, these board members, these committees, how did you navigate the no's that they and did they walk away? Was there guilt? Like what was that cost of putting up those boundaries?
Yeah, there's a lot of guilt. And, one in particular kept coming back and asking me to do more, or, advise, or, they really didn't want to let me go. And I really didn't want to. So every time I had to get my resolve up, and, remember why I was saying no to this, because I wanted to come back and help them. And so you have to remind yourself each time of why you're doing this and what you're saying yes to. And that was the big realization that I had in that coaching call that really turned it for me, was that I realized that every no that I'm saying is a yes, and every yes is a no to what I'm already doing. And that key there.
Okay. Whoa. Okay, say that one more time. That is worth people listening to.
So every time you say yes, you're saying no to the things you're already doing, because you're deluding yourself.
That was a moment. Yeah, it was a moment. Yeah, for that. All right. So you had this epiphany about this to gain some control to do this. You had to deal with your friends and colleagues and other folks who might have been depending on you. So you had to navigate through all of that. So how did you, or what are some of the steps? And I think some of this, I believe, probably leads into some of your coaching that you work. You take your practical experiences. I know from a coaching standpoint, I take all my practical experiences and I just build it right into the coaching program, because I can guarantee you that if I'm having it, somebody else is having it too. So what steps did you take to not do that again?
I'll tell you that I'm still taking these steps every day, because more keeps coming on the plate. That's just our culture and my nature. And so I have to continually do this still. It's been years, almost a decade. And so the steps are to get really clear on what you want. And so the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown was really helpful for me in this. And I still go back to the ideas of the vital few and the trivial many. And how are you figuring out what your vital few is? What's really important? Because there's always that 80-20 to things. And how are you applying that in your work and your personal life? What really matters? Because not everything really matters. And so I I go back to that over and over again. And in fact, I do this monthly now. And I recommend for my clients to do it quarterly, because it's such a practice, and it's something we have to always keep thinking, because what you want changes. And so what will support that is going to change too. And something that was in your vital few last year might not be in your vital few this year. And so when you can define what it is that you really want, what's really important to you, what's really going to make a difference, move the needle, they say, then that in itself defines your trivial many, because everything else is the trivial many. And that was really hard for me in the beginning, because one of the things that I do is I say, okay, how committed am I to this thing? On a scale of 1 to 10, is this a 9 or a 10? Like, I'll give up a lot of things to make this happen. And I had a lot of 7s and 8s on my list. And so those are hard, because you got to say, not now, and maybe not ever, but not now. And so that helped me to not have to shut the door completely on things, but just say, maybe this isn't the season for it. And so once you can kind of make that plan of what's really important, what are you going to let go of? And then that's where I did the, to the exit plan, I called it, like, how am I going to get out of these things that I've committed to? And so, sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's just you that you committed to, but sometimes you have other people that are affected, and you need to, those are harder decisions, and we feel obligated to keep those things going. And so that also brings a little onus on us to make commitments carefully,
Right. So go ahead.
Well, what would be the first 3 steps then you would recommend to a, early career emerging leader that is the ambitious type, that is taking on those things, that's saying yes to this, yes to that? How do they avoid that type of burden, overwhelming busyness, but still be seen as the doer, responsible party? Like, what would you advise a 28-year-old up and coming leader?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because at that age, you do need to be the doer. You need to be somebody that people can count on. And so there's a balance here. And so ideally, you'd be at about 80% capacity, so that you can take on those stretch assignments, those juicy new things that your manager wants to give you. There's always going to be things that you want to say yes to. So saying no is about preserving a little bandwidth for that. And so that's my first advice is don't go at 100% all the time. And how do you do that? My second piece would be to get very clear on where you want to go and what's going to help you versus what is busy work. And so, like, let's say your goal is to get promoted to the next level. There's going to be things that you might raise your hand to do that is more busy work than promotable work, I call it. And so if it's not going to get you where you want to go, sometimes you still have to do it, because as a team member, we need to contribute to the team, and we need to share in that kind of non-promotable work that, theoretically nobody would want. And so, somebody has to schedule lunch, somebody has to, organize the meeting, things like that. And so we can share in those things, make sure you're doing your part, and then be very clear and not raising your hand for the things that aren't going to benefit you.
Right. And I really loved how you said that, where, there are some things that you just have to do. What I like to help folks do is make the distinction between choices that they make and outcomes that they're going to get, whether they're intended or unintended. And to take on an activity so that you think you can be seen, and it doesn't turn out to be seen, or if you're taking on the activity and you're not sure what it is, I think you just have to be honest with yourself about what activities you're doing. And then for me, I've got some ideas about how to prioritize, but I'm really curious for you, because the one thing you mentioned is how you want to align what you're doing with your priority. I think that's very important. What criteria do you use to help set your priorities with all the work that's coming in. So, these are folks that are emerging leaders wanting to be driving leaders at some point in time. And sometimes they're just getting dumped on. It's like all this stuff is filtering. How do you filter in and out? So what are some things that you have done that have been helpful?
I go back to good time management practices for that, because if you can get a lot more done if you align your activities to your energy. And because if you're trying to get your deep work done at the end of the day when you're exhausted and you don't have any creative juices left, it's going to take you 8 hours to do what you could do in an hour in the morning. And so, like, I used to come in early to have 2 hours of deep work time when I was a writer. I was a blogger for in one role, and I needed to write first because otherwise writing can take me a really long time, or I can kind of slam it out. And it's that alignment can make a huge difference in how motivated you are to do something. So if somebody hands you something and you're not really that motivated to do it, find the reason why this is important, because that will speed up your work so much. And so when we're kind of aligned in our own efficiency, there's so much procrastination that goes on, and procrastination is really tricky because so often procrastination looks like other important things to do. And so there's, those three things. When you've got those aligned, you can get a lot more done as far as just the kind of the massive workloads that a lot of people are feeling these days. And then getting really clear with your boss, like, hey, here's all my priorities. Does that look good to you? Is this, in the right order? And here's what I'm working on. And when they give you one more thing, ask them, have a conversation about, should something come off my plate here so I can do this? And if the answer is no, then it's going to be, how are we going to get all this done? Should we outsource something? There's different ways to go about that conversation. And it's a conversation that your manager needs to have, because they're not always aware of what all is on your plate, especially when other people are giving you things to do as well.
No, and that's really great. The art of really the negotiation of your priorities of what you're doing. So it's a matter of alignment, asking yourself, what does this accomplish if I do this? And you're right. You put all those items on your list, and it's not just doing them by a stream of consciousness, but it's actually evaluating those items that are on your list and identifying 1 to 3 items that you feel you ultimately have to get done today, because if not, you're going to keep other things from happening. These are the most important things. These are the big rocks that oftentimes we hear different people talk about. What are your rocks today, and are you getting your big rocks done? And it really does allow you to focus. And I think that you have this mindset that says, oh, I can do these couple little things and get them knocked off. And that may be true, but it doesn't help the bigger picture. And that's really what it is. I kind of equate all of this to the science project, where you have the glass tank and the instructor says, I've got big rocks and pebbles and sand and water, and how do I get all of them into the tank? Well, you could put a little bit of water in, a little bit of sand in, and say, oh, I get those now, so I get those done. But the only way to solve it is to put the big rocks in first, pebbles, sand, and then the water. Otherwise, it'll never happen. And if folks can keep that illustration present, I think it gives them an opportunity to know where they need to go. And the other thing you said that was so important is negotiation, is working with individuals to say, okay, this is what's on my plate. I'm not telling you I'm not going to do it, and I'm not telling you that I need help doing it. What I want is priority. I want to know what's most important to you, because if I'm doing this work for you, then I need to know, where are your priorities? And I've had people who I have worked with over the years who will take a conversation that sometimes a leader has in the hallway, like it's the task. So they actually create priorities that really aren't priorities. Like, they don't understand that the leader is just brainstorming something like, oh, it'd be really cool if I had a report that blah, 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 right? So they say that. And the person goes, oh, I'm going to be impressive. I'm going to go work on the report. They work on the report for 2 weeks, and they bring in the report, and the person looks at them and goes, what's this? Well, that was the report. When we were walking down the hallway, you said, I'd love to have this report. He goes, oh, well, I was just kind of. So really understanding what role you're taking on, or what your tasks are is is as important as actually getting them done and getting them done on time.
Absolutely.
I have a crazy conversation. I met with an executive team one time that we were doing our session with, and they were talking about their goals, and they talked about the new year and how much the breakdown was going to be based on certain types of business. And someone said, well, it's going to be this percentage of this. And one woman was like, where did that come from? Like, I thought it was this and this. And she said, no, that meeting that we had, and literally it was a hallway meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And she was going to be judged on the percentage of business that came from this bucket based on but so that one was, he intended that random meeting to be intentional. So it's one of those,
right.
I thought that was just a conversation. So the idea of clarifying and clear as kind and everything.
Yeah.
I do want to take your take. I think we'd have a whole other conversation on if ADHD side of things, because I have learned in my own journey of being diagnosed in the last couple of years, not realizing that I had it prior because I was living the hyper phase for so long until COVID. I have learned that the eat the frog mentality and doing the big stuff doesn't work for me, because I need the dopamine hit of accomplishing a few things before getting into that big thing. I have to have a ramp up. So if I have the big 3 things, I'm gonna procrastinate. I'm gonna push them off. So I have to, okay, my first item is send off 3 emails that are easy, and then do this. And then I'm like, oh, that felt good. And then I get my momentum. So I've actually learned system.
But that's a plan, and that's a system. And that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, if you were just saying to yourself, I'll knock these things off because that'll give me more time for something bigger, may not be the same strategy as when Ben was saying, I know me, I know who I am, I need to do something a little different. And that's the beauty of it. It's the making conscious decisions about what you're doing, as opposed to being an accidental leader. So it's be an intentional leader, not an accidental leader. Don't just like fall into it. Although I have had somebody tell me it's better to be lucky than smart, but who knows? I
want to get your take on this. We have an expression of act like the career you want, not the job you have. And we're talking about emerging leaders and taking on workload. But there's also this mentality right now that I see that's prevalent of, don't ask me to do the thing without the pay, right?
Right.
So what is your take on work ethic, doing more to then get the pay later? Like that's a common theme that I hear in, I want to say, sub 30-year-old crowd.
Yeah.
And that may not be your market. So if you can't testify to it, that's fine.
No, I see this, boundaries go wrong a lot with younger people, because there is this, they might hear somebody who's older in their career, who's at that point where they really need to start setting boundaries, and think that applies to them. And you have to be careful about setting too many boundaries early in your career, because it can just make you look like you're not a team player and that you don't care. And nobody's going to promote somebody who's not a team player that doesn't care about others. And so you have to care about the company. You have to care about your team. You have to care about getting things done. You have to care about helping others get things done, and in a nice, cohesive way. You want to be likable, somebody that people want on the team. And, nobody's going to want you on the team if you won't do the work and if you say no all the time, and it was particularly your manager. And so, it can really create a lot of problems. And so, we talk about people pleasing being a problem, but it's also a pro-social thing to do. And we do need to make others happy first, before we get those opportunities. And next, the thing you need to do is show that you can start working at that next level, which means doing some work at the next level. And that might feel like you're not getting paid for it, but you are, because you're never going to get the opportunity to be at the next level unless you can start showing that you think that way and that you can start acting that way. And how do you do that? It's by taking on some work that really is next level work. Now, I'm not saying that you need to work at that next level for years on end and give them free labor forever, but definitely project by project, 6 to 9 months, a year. There's nothing set in stone, because it also depends on when the opportunities come in that company. But it's something that I see people using this tool, more like a sledgehammer than ball
Yeah.
peen hammer, you know.
I know, and I really like that. And the key word you said was opportunity. It's like, we talk in accounting about opportunity cost, and this becomes opportunity revenue.
Yeah.
So really a great way to do that. Oh my gosh. So we've had such a fun time so far with you in this conversation. So tell our listeners and the viewers on YouTube, how can they get in contact with you?
The best way is that I'm on LinkedIn every day. And so I post daily, and send me a DM if you have any questions. And I also have my own podcast, Sister Smart Leadership. So that's a great way to find me as well.
Oh, good.
And that name is Jill, Jillavey.
Yes.
That's right. Excellent. Great. All right. So thank you for that. And I know that you really prepared a lot before you came onto the podcast today. What was a question that you thought we would ask that we didn't?
I thought you might ask if this I call it the busyness trap, if it's different for men and women.
Ooh, Dan,
That's a great
think?
question.
That's a great question.
Is it?
So is the busyness trap different for men and women?
I do think it is. I think that women we're kind of cultured to look out for others and before we look out for ourselves. And that can be definitely one of the factors of putting too much on your plate. And so there's a people pleasing thing that can be a much bigger factor. Men have people pleaser too, but it can be a much bigger factor for women to get over that. I feel like I'm letting people down or feeling guilty about that. So I think it is a little
Well, not
different.
only that too, but the realization of the glass ceiling, that we've worked really hard in business in certain areas to try to elevate men and women's roles with more equity and equality to it, and sometimes it doesn't happen. I think sometimes we overcompensate in different ways than what we need to. So I thought it was interesting to hear you say that. I think for me, a lot of my busyness, when I compare it to my wife's busyness, my busyness is problem solving. I am thinking of things to do, and I have to be very careful when we're talking, because she'll tell me about something that happened during the day, and my mind immediately goes to, oh, I need to give her all this advice to problem solve. And It's not, that wasn't problem solving for her. It was just sharing, for the moment. And then she has a lot more of sometimes smaller details to handle during the day, whereas some of my projects come on a much larger scale, especially working in the corporate world or working with, these highly professional clients and things that they're doing. So it is different. So I'm glad you did it. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
So, well, we really appreciate you being with us on the show. I know that our listeners and viewers are going to get a lot out of this. So we're going to close out today, like we close all of our Cohesion Culture programs, with this simple mantra: you don't have to know everything.
Just need to be teachable.